There are moments in life when you find yourself asking, why does it feel like heaven is silent? Why do I keep praying, believing, waiting, and yet nothing seems to move? You fast, you pray, you speak words of faith, you try to hold on, and still, it can feel as though your blessing is standing just outside your reach. But what if the issue is not that God is unwilling to bless you? What if heaven is ready, but your hands are too full to receive? And sometimes we pray for open doors while still clinging to the very things that are keeping those doors shut. Sometimes we ask for new seasons while dragging old chains behind us. And there are things people carry for years without realizing those very things are blocking what God has prepared. And today, I want to speak about 5 things that often stand between a person and the blessing they have been praying for. And not because God is cruel, not because God enjoys withholding, but because some things cannot coexist with what He wants to place in your life. And the first thing blocking your blessing is unforgiveness, and nothing poisons the soul like bitterness. And you may have every right to be hurt. You may have every reason to remember what was done to you. The wound may be real, the betrayal may be deep, the pain may have changed your life, but carrying offense is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to suffer. And unforgiveness does not imprison the other person. It imprisons you, and so many people are waiting for God to move while holding on to resentment with both hands. And you say, but they hurt me, and yes, perhaps they did, but your future is too valuable to be chained to your past. And forgiveness is not pretending it never happened. Forgiveness is releasing your right to revenge and placing justice in higher hands. And you cannot walk freely into tomorrow while dragging yesterday's pain, and some blessings require emotional space. And some miracles require a heart that is not crowded with bitterness, and let it go, and not because they deserve it, but because your peace is worth more. And the second thing blocking your blessing is fear, and fear has robbed more destinies than failure ever could. And fear whispers, stay where it is safe. And fear says, what if it doesn't work? And fear says, what if you fail again? And so people remain stuck in familiar discomfort because uncertainty feels terrifying, but faith has never thrived inside comfort zones. And you cannot pray for expansion while worshiping security, and you cannot ask for new territory while refusing to move. And blessings often live on the other side of obedience, and obedience often feels uncomfortable. And it felt uncomfortable for the one stepping onto stormy waters, and it felt uncomfortable for the one walking around walls that made no logical sense, and it felt uncomfortable for the one leaving behind what was familiar to go where they had never been. And faith is not the absence of fear, and faith is moving anyway, and fear will tell you to stay small. But there comes a moment when you must decide whether your fear will be louder than your calling, and release it. And you were not created to live inside cages built by your imagination. And the third thing blocking your blessing is pride. And pride is subtle, and it doesn't always appear loud or arrogant. And sometimes pride hides behind phrases like, I can handle this on my own. And pride refuses help. And pride resists correction. And pride would rather struggle privately than admit weakness. But humility creates room for grace. And there is power in surrender, and there is strength in acknowledging your need. And the greatest transformations often begin with honest admission. And I need help. And I was wrong. And I don't know everything. And these are not statements of defeat. And these are gateways to growth. And pride hardens the heart, and a hardened heart struggles to receive. And sometimes the blessing you need is hidden inside instruction you do not want to hear, and sometimes breakthrough is waiting behind correction. And do not let ego cost you what humility could unlock, and lay it down. And the fourth thing blocking your blessing is disobedience. And many people pray for direction while ignoring what has already been made clear, and they ask for more revelation while neglecting the last instruction. And sometimes the next door does not open because the current assignment remains unfinished, and delayed obedience is still disobedience, and you cannot negotiate with truth, and you cannot customize obedience according to convenience, and sometimes it is the simple things, and an apology you know you need to make, and a habit you know needs to end, and a step you know you need to take, and a place you know you need to leave, and a decision you keep postponing, and all the while you are asking for breakthrough. But blessing often follows alignment, and not perfection, and alignment. And when your choices begin to match what you already know is right, momentum shifts, and peace returns, and clarity increases, and doors begin opening, and not because life becomes effortless, but because you are no longer resisting what needs to happen. And obedience is powerful, and even when it feels costly, and especially when it feels costly. And the fifth thing blocking your blessing is attachment to what no longer belongs in your life. And this is one of the hardest things to release. And because sometimes it is not bad things we struggle to let go of, and sometimes it is familiar things and comfortable things and things we have outgrown and relationships that once served a purpose, and mindsets that once protected us, and versions of ourselves we have become attached to. And yet, there comes a season where holding on becomes more painful than releasing, and not everything meant for one chapter is meant for the next, and you cannot fully embrace what is ahead while clinging tightly to what is behind. And there are seasons that expire, and maturity means recognizing when something has ended, and this is difficult. And because endings often feel like loss, but not every ending is punishment, and sometimes endings are preparation, and sometimes release is necessary for renewal, and sometimes what feels like subtraction is actually divine protection. And so, if something has become a weight instead of a blessing, ask yourself honestly, and why am I still carrying this? And is this helping me grow? Or is this simply familiar? And there is a difference. And do not confuse familiarity with purpose. And sometimes your next season is waiting on your willingness to release what no longer fits who you are becoming. And so here they are, and 5 things blocking your blessing, and unforgiveness, and fear, and pride, and disobedience, and attachment to what no longer belongs. And these things are heavy, and many people are exhausted, not because life is too difficult, but because they are carrying too much. And what would happen if you finally released it? And what would happen if today became the day you stopped fighting to keep what is draining you? And what would happen if you opened your hands, and because closed fists cannot receive, and open hands can? And sometimes the greatest act of faith is not striving harder, and it is surrendering deeper and not holding tighter, but letting go. And when you finally release what has been blocking the flow, and you may be surprised by how quickly things begin to shift, and not because heaven suddenly noticed you, but because you finally made room and let it go. Unforgiveness quietly becomes a burden that affects every part of life. Many people continue praying for peace while carrying resentment from old wounds, betrayals, and disappointments. The pain may be real, and what happened may have left deep scars, but holding on to bitterness only keeps the heart trapped in the same moment of hurt. It clouds judgment, steals joy, and makes it difficult to move forward with freedom. Forgiveness is not denying the pain or pretending nothing happened. It is a decision to release the weight of anger and stop allowing past offenses to control the present. A free heart makes room for healing and peace, and fear often disguises itself as caution, convincing people to stay where everything feels predictable and safe. It whispers doubts about failure, rejection, and uncertainty, creating invisible barriers that stop progress before it even begins. Many opportunities are missed not because someone lacks ability, but because fear convinces them they are not ready. It keeps the mind focused on everything that could go wrong instead of what could go right. Living under fear leads to hesitation, overthinking, and constant self-protection. Growth requires movement beyond familiar boundaries, even when the future is unclear. Courage is choosing action despite discomfort, doubt, and unanswered questions. And pride can quietly influence decisions without being immediately recognized. It often appears as independence, stubbornness, or the refusal to admit weakness. Many people struggle unnecessarily because they resist advice, correction, or support, believing they must manage everything alone. Pride makes it difficult to acknowledge mistakes, ask for help, or accept uncomfortable truths. It creates distance in relationships and blocks personal growth by protecting the ego at all costs. A person controlled by pride often prioritizes appearance over transformation. Humility opens the door to learning, wisdom, and change. It allows someone to be teachable, honest, and willing to grow beyond limitations. And disobedience often appears in small, repeated choices that go against what someone already knows should be done. Many people desire progress while continually avoiding necessary action, delaying decisions, or ignoring clear direction. It is easy to ask for change while remaining attached to habits, environments, or behaviors that prevent movement forward. Ignoring important responsibilities creates unnecessary setbacks and confusion. Small acts of resistance can accumulate over time, making growth feel distant and difficult. Discipline and alignment with what is right create structure, clarity, and momentum. Following through on necessary actions builds trust, maturity, and readiness for greater opportunities and responsibilities. And attachment to things that no longer belong in your life can quietly hold back growth and progress. Sometimes it is not harmful habits alone, but familiar relationships, routines, environments, or old versions of yourself that have already served their purpose. People often hold on because change feels uncomfortable and uncertainty feels risky. Familiarity can create emotional dependence, making it difficult to recognize when something has become a burden instead of a benefit. Refusing to release what is outdated creates little room for new opportunities, healthier patterns, or personal transformation. Growth often requires separation from what once felt comfortable but no longer supports your future. And surrender is often misunderstood as weakness, when in reality it requires honesty, trust, and the willingness to release control. Many people exhaust themselves trying to manage every detail, force outcomes, and hold together situations beyond their influence. This constant need for control creates stress, frustration, and emotional fatigue. Surrender allows a person to acknowledge their limits and stop carrying unnecessary pressure. It creates mental and emotional space for clarity, peace, and renewed direction. Letting go of excessive control does not mean giving up responsibility, but recognizing that not everything can be solved through force, worry, or endless striving alone.